Okay, so I'm in a 92 Blazer right now. This install will pertain to 88 to 94 roughly, any CK or C1500 GM truck. So for these particular trucks, we're going to do this the proper way. We're going to have the proper mounting kit, we're going to have the delete pocket for here, and I have a special harness that goes from here all the way down here where the actual factory radio is. Now don't go and be one of those people that cuts this out and reuses it. It looks lame. Also, spend the extra 20, 30 bucks, whatever the shop charges to buy this piece, because this opens up new doors when you delete this. Plus, if you don't change this out, it's dead and it's just lame. Okay, so I'm doing the pocket first. I'm half cheating because I didn't unplug all the plugs on the left side of the dash. I recommend you do, but I'm being lazy today. So, you have to remove this out there that I showed you earlier. Now, you can't just unplug it because the wires are connected right on the circuit board. So, what you have to do is, down here where I pointed earlier, as you can see right here, is the original radio. So, if you just unplug those, the wires will come out. We still have to unbolt this with the 7 mils in order to get the antenna adapter into the rest of the other plugs. And also, if you're wondering how to remove this piece, you cannot cheat. You have to drop the steering column. There are two 15 mils on these trucks you have to drop down. Don't try to massage this piece out. These GM interiors are notorious for being extremely brittle, especially over the years when they're this old. The material that they use is not that great. So if you try to feng shui this thing out, you're not going to. It's probably going to crack on you. So take the extra time, take apart some more parts, that way you don't damage these pieces. Alright, so I pulled the rest of the parts out. I remove the radio down here, tape player and equalizer up here, all removed, and the pockets installed, dash is back in for this part of the install. Now, why am I harping on you guys to get this pocket? Do I just want you to spend more money? Not really, but look at the potential I just opened up on your vehicle. By removing this, you can install a TAC, switches. If you have a rear USB, you can flush it in here. You can do whatever you want. You've opened up a lot of real estate on the dash now to do more mods. Now that's awesome if you ask me. Okay, now onto the good part. We're going to do the actual install itself. Today what I'm installing is a Pioneer DHP5900IB. Yes, it is old, but it's still a good stereo. So, you saw this part before, you just pull this part off and you're looking at it and you're like, why is he telling me to buy a mounting kit? This hole is perfect for it. A lot of people that are unfamiliar with these trucks think the cage will fit right in. It does with a lot of cutting and it looks like ass after. What you need to do is go buy the proper mounting kit. Now I got this one from Metra. Now it looks really similar. Let me stand them side by side, which is the point. You want it to match the truck. The main differences are this is designed for a DIN opening, and if you look here, see how much that sticks out? That's going to make life a lot easier when you're doing your install, because when as the deck slides in, these aftermarket decks are a lot deeper. So here's the aftermarket deck, and here's what I pulled out of the dash. So when you take a look, you can see this is a lot shallower than this, which is fine for this design. This was designed to be in there. This was not designed to be in that truck. So what they do is they space it out, giving you a lot more room and making life a lot easier. All you have to do is you have to transfer the vent from here onto here. Now when you transfer these vents, there's these little clips in here. Be very careful. You have to use a small little pick, take your time, and don't lose these, or else you're not going to get these to fit into the new mounting kit. Alright, so I've gone ahead and prepped my mounting kit. I've transferred over these clips from the original radio. The original vents are in, and I've mounted my cage and secured it by bending all the tabs in here. For this application, I'm not going to paint the cage because it matches pretty well with the mounting kit, but if I had the black version, I would go ahead and paint this whole cage black just so it matches a little bit better. To wire up the harness properly, what you're going to want is a good quality soldering iron, sap straps or zip ties, good shrink wrap, and solder. I like to use lead-based solder just because I think it just does a better job and it's just easier to work with. Be careful when you're working with this stuff. Don't breathe while you're soldering. You don't want to inhale the fumes because it is lead. And then some sort of heat source to make this stuff shrink. Okay, so the first thing you want to do is you want to prep the harness. With your aftermarket harness, they usually have the wire insulator already cut off a bit, just to pull it off. And what I like to do is twist all the wires after, just so you have, it's a little bit more stiff and easier to work with. That way you have less chance of burrs sticking out of this heat shrink. Whoever worked on this harness before did an okay job, but what you want to do is you want to have everything the same length. You don't want it to look like this. So first things we're going to do, I'm going to continuously shoot this whole install as much as possible so you can see it step by step. So I'm going to take off these little zap straps or zip ties that retain the little labels on them. You don't need those, so these little things, just get rid of them. Unless you don't really remember what they were for, then yeah, maintain them. So now we got here, to clean it up. It's okay to shorten it because we have a lot of slack or a lot of line on the other side. So I'm going to shorten this actually a little bit. So I'm going to get everything nice and neat as much as possible. Take a set of cutters and cut it right across. So now it's more even. So as we work, we're going to keep tidying up so we don't make a huge mess of things and get disorganized. Okay, so now we have this, a lot neater. So all you have to do is take off your insulations. Using a good quality set of wire strippers will make life a lot easier. You don't have to spend a lot of money. Like, I've bought ones that cost $10 and they work just fine. And make sure you don't take off too much insulation that you're actually making the gauge of wire thinner by removing strands of wire. So just take your time with this. I'm not going to use this mute wire, so I'm not going to strip it off. And I'm going to cap it off with heat shrink as well. So then we're going to go ahead and twist them all. Because we want to do a good job, right? And then we'll go ahead and clean up our little mess again. Okay, next step. Now this part, when you're starting this, it's hard to keep track of things. So what you're going to want to do, it'll probably be easier on this harness because we have more wire, is you have your pre-cut shrink tube, shrink wrap, whatever you want to call it, and go ahead and place it on all the wires beforehand. I do prefer to solder and shrink wrap my installs. It's cleaner. It takes a little bit longer, but I trust the connection more than butt connectors. I have been doing butt connector connections for years, haven't had them fail, but they have a higher chance of failing because of the way that, just the way it works. This does take a little bit longer, but I think in the long run, this is a better way of making your connections. But butt connectors are 100% acceptable. This is just, I think this is better. Okay, so we got all our shrink tube on there. Now, what you have to do is, these are standardized colors now, so don't worry about it. It's going to be color for color. So what you want to do is, we're going to do constant first, constant power, and we're going to twist these tightly. I like to start off with the wires that actually make the deck turn on. This is just how I like to work. So you start there. We have our solder here. We're going to take our iron, place it underneath, and make our connection. I don't have my sponge right now. You'd be cleaning it as you go along. We're just going to go ahead and solder everything. Make this a little bit quicker. Move on to the next one. Double check and look at your solder connections and make sure you don't have a cold solder joint. Make sure that solder is actually getting sucked in between the wires there. So there's a switch accessory. In this particular case, we do have a ground wire in our harness, so we're going to go ahead and connect it. Don't have to run our own ground in this application. And we can go ahead and slip the shrink tube over. And I'm going to go ahead and finalize these connections right now, just to stay organized. Be careful to open flame. Don't stay too close and constant one spot, or else you'll just burn the insulation. Let that cool down for a few seconds, and then when it's cooled down, you can touch it. Double check with your finger and make sure that there's no burrs. So if you prick yourself, then there's a chance that that burr can go into another wire and actually create a short. So you want to make sure that that doesn't happen. Up next, I'm going to hook up the amp terminal wire. Some vehicles have a factory amp, most of them don't. You don't have to hook up this wire, but I hook it up just as far as practice goes. Read your owner's manual before you hook up this wire. There are some vehicles you cannot hook up this wire, like Volkswagens, for example. But in this application, I can hook up this wire no problem. I'm not going to have any issues. Up next, the illumination wire. This wire confuses a lot of people. What this wire does is when the lights turn on, it dims the display on the deck. That way it's not so bright, it doesn't blind you at night. Some harnesses will give you two wires. So you have a dimmer wire, illumination wire. Typically you can just hook up the illumination wire to that. To be safe though, to make this simple for you guys, hook it up if it matches. If it doesn't match, don't hook it up. If you want to play it safe, just do it that way. Okay, so let's finalize these connections. Using a regular lighter or barbecue lighter will work just as well as this. This is just faster and cooler. Meat wire, like I said, we're not going to use it, so we're going to cap it off. Sometimes if you find that this is too big for this, you can fold it and then place this on if you want. Nicely capped off. So now we've done all the wires to turn the deck on and for function as well. Last, we have our speakers. And keep in mind when you're doing your wires that you're keeping note of the wire with the black stripe that stands for negative. You want to make sure you don't get these mixed up because you want to make sure your speakers stay in phase. So we're just going to do 4 wires at a time just so it doesn't get too chaotic. So they're all out of their way. So go ahead and just solder them all up. Now if you got faster, you could just twist them all together, solder them all in one shot, and then do it all. But I'm doing this in stages to break it down for you guys, just so you see what's going on, and to make it life a little bit easier. It takes a little bit longer, but that's okay. It's better to do it right than fast. Okay, so that's rear right, rear left, now rear the fronts. So gray is front right. And white is front left. Again, keeping note of where the black stripe is. It's a little cold, just a little more heat. That's it. Now, after you solder, don't just put this right over because it's still hot. It's going to want to shrink and it's going to make life harder putting this over. So let it cool down for a few seconds. Okay. So this wire we're not going to use, so we're going to go ahead and cap this off, because keep in mind this wire does go live when the lights turn on, so don't leave that bare, unless you're popping fuses a lot and you're not going to know why. Okay. So we've gone ahead, we're just feeling all the connections you've made, making sure that everything's tight. This one's not so tight. Making sure that there's no burrs sticking out or anything. Okay, we're looking good. So that looks nice. So to finish this off and make it more organized, we're going to take your zip ties or your zap straps. I know you Americans like to call them zip ties, while I call them zap straps. Deal with it. I'm not going to tie the antenna wire up with this. I'm just going to keep it separate because typically one end plugs in the back of the deck here and then this goes here. So you don't have to tie that with it. And here you go, it's nice and thin now, looks good. You can leave it like this, you can wrap it with tape, you can do whatever you want to do, but now we're ready to install this into the car. Or the truck. Okay, so I've ran my wire and I left it all loose just so you can see what's going on. Here's the original connections you saw me do. Left myself some slack, and you can see this wire that dropped down here. Now, I will have to tie this up, but just so you can see what's going on, those plugs that I unplugged out of that big radio down here, they plug easily right in here. It's designed for this. And then the radio antenna that was also up top is also here and runs all the way down. Now all you have to do now is tie this all up and make it neat and install your deck. Before you install the mounting kit, there's a support bracket down here for the original tape player. Go ahead and remove that. I've already taken out the 7mm here and down low. so you can pull this piece out, but you're gonna make a lot more room if you take this piece out. Alright, so I've gone ahead and snapped the kit in, ready to put the deck in. Just plug it all in. Now you might realize that the kit doesn't match the interior that well. That's just how a lot of these mass-produced kits go. If this does bug you, you can just go to your auto parts store and just get some color match paint, just paint the kit before you install it. So after you plug in your wiring harness and your antenna, just go ahead and slide the deck into the sleeve. Make sure that the tabs on the side are pushed in, that way it's something to grab onto the deck. I'm going to put this beauty trim on after, when I put the camera down, that way you see how much nicer it looks afterwards. And after, just double check, turn the vehicle on and make sure that your stereo turns on. And we got white noise, so we're good to go.